Now we are starting with the second half of the peritoneum. Until now we have seen what is peritoneum, what are peritoneal folds, what are all the retroperitoneal organs. Moving on, so we are starting with the next part, peritoneal cavity. It is the largest and most complex serous sac. It is a potential space in between the parietal and the visceral peritoneum. As aptly said, the peritoneal cavity is not as big as shown here because the abdomen will be literally be accommodating the whole lot more organs that what are shown here, and hence the area is artificially enlarged for just illustrative purposes. Peritoneal cavity will be filled with 50 ml, around 50 ml of serous fluid. In males, the peritoneum is a closed sac. In case of females, it is an open sac because in case of female, the ovaries are lying inside the peritoneal cavity. So, in order to collect the ova, the uterine tubes literally puncture the peritoneal sac, by means of which the peritoneal cavity will be communicating via the uterus and vagina with the exterior, and hence the peritoneal cavity in case of females becomes an open sac. Now, the next thing, peritoneal cavity and its subdivisions. In this picture, as you can see, the whole of the peritoneal cavity is divided into a bigger, the browner things, what we call as greater sac. So, many of the abdominal organs are covered with the peritoneum of the greater sac, whereas a few organs are covered by the small area of the peritoneal cavity, that is called as lesser sac. So the peritoneal cavity subdivisions are the bigger, the greater sac, and the smaller, lesser sac. Both the sacs, that is the greater sac and the lesser sac, are communicating via a small foramen that is called as epiploic foramen, otherwise called as foramen of Winslow, or even adductus or opening of lesser sac. So all along, as you have seen, they don't communicate with each other. They are completely separate from each other except at one place where the lesser sac and greater sac are continuous. That foramen is nothing but epiploic foramen. The location of the epiploic foramen is in between the behind the right free margin of lesser omentum. So if you remember, lesser omentum is nothing but a peritoneal fold in between the liver and the stomach. So this one is the lesser omentum. So right behind the lesser omentum is located the thing, whole like thing what you are looking at there is the epiploic foramen, and it corresponds to 12 thoracic vertebra. This picture is nothing but a cross section of the abdomen at the level of epiploic foramen. You can appreciate the epiploic foramen a little better in this one. So this one, this whole area is the greater sac, and this one behind the stomach, this one is the lesser sac. So they are not communicating anywhere else except at this place. This one is nothing but our epiploic foramen. So this one is the lesser omentum. This is the right free margin of the lesser omentum, where the anterior layer is continuous with the posterior layer of the lesser omentum. And this one, the vein we are looking at here, is the inferior vena cava. So the boundaries which you can appreciate in this diagram are: anterior boundary is formed by the right free margin of the lesser omentum. The posterior boundary is being formed by inferior vena cava. So now, once again, the boundaries of epiploic foramen. So the boundaries which we already know are the anterior boundary which we are looking at here. This one, this whole is the lesser omentum. This one is the right free margin of the lesser omentum, where the anterior layer one we are looking at will be continuous with the behind posterior layer. At the right free margin of the lesser omentum are enclosed three structures. One is the common bile duct, and then hepatic artery, and behind them will be portal vein. So the anterior boundary of epiploic foramen will be formed by right free margin of the lesser omentum, where anterior and posterior layers of the lesser omentum are continuous, which in turn are enclosing three structures: common bile duct, hepatic artery, and portal vein. Now that is the anterior boundary. Behind, that is the posterior boundary, as you have seen in the previous diagram, will be formed by one vein, that is inferior vena cava. Now we are left with two more boundaries, above and below, that is superior and inferior. Superiorly, as you can see, it is the liver. To be exact, the part of the liver which becomes the superior boundary is this one, that is the caudate process of liver. Inferior boundary is formed by first part of duodenum. So this is stomach, which is continuing as duodenum. This one becomes the first part of duodenum. So the boundaries of epiploic foramen are anterior right free margin of lesser omentum, posterior inferior vena cava, superior caudate process of the liver, and inferior is the first part of duodenum. Now tracing of the peritoneum. So peritoneum, as we all know, it is a closed sac. It can be better understood by following it by vertical tracing and horizontal tracing. In case of vertical tracing, we will be tracing the peritoneum from diaphragm until it once again reaches the lower part of the pelvic cavity. In horizontal tracing, we will be tracing the peritoneum at in a transverse section of the abdomen. Once again, as it is quite a big thing, we will be tracing it at two levels. So we are starting with the vertical tracing. We will be starting at the level of umbilicus, anterior abdominal wall, and then moving up until it reaches the diaphragm, and then once again we will cover all the organs which are present over there, and then descend downwards along the posterior abdominal wall, and then here see this diagram. So we'll be starting at this level and then go up near the diaphragm, and then cover all the organs which are present in the upper part, and then descend further downwards along the posterior abdominal wall, thereby reaching the lower part of the abdomen, that is pelvic cavity. So where the peritoneum will be covering the organs which are present within the pelvic cavity, and then once again we will be reaching the same level where we have started, that is the umbilicus. So now let us start it. The first diagram. So this one is the umbilicus. So right from the umbilicus, actually in the midline is one ligament, a sickle shaped one, which we already know. This is the falciform ligament. Here the parietal peritoneum is getting folded, forming a sickle shaped fold right in the midline of the anterior abdominal wall, called as falciform ligament. As it goes up, you can see it is getting attached onto the anterior and superior surface of the liver. After reaching the superior surface, it is diverging a little bit onto the right lobe of the liver and a little bit onto the left lobe of the liver. The one which is on the right lobe of the liver, it forms a coronary ligament, once again a superior coronary ligament. The one which is covering the left lobe of the liver becomes the anterior layer of left triangular ligament. Now moving on to this diagram. So we have started at this level, going up, covering the whole of the anterior superior surface, and then once again moving up. Here you can see the peritoneum is double layered, connecting the liver onto the diaphragm which is present over here. Here is a formation of a ligament, and that ligament is superior layer of coronary ligament. And then once again it is covering the whole of the liver, covering even this one is the gallbladder, and once again it goes on to the posterior surface of the liver. Here once again it is becoming double layer. This ligament here being formed here is called as inferior layer of coronary ligament. So this is the posterior surface of the liver. The one which is present above this double layered fold of peritoneum is superior layer of coronary ligament, which is present below, once again a double layered one. This is inferior layer of coronary ligament. Now after covering almost the whole of the liver, it descends downwards. So after covering the whole of the liver, it is descending downwards. So this one is the right kidney. So it is covering the anterior surface of suprarenal gland and the right kidney and then descends further downwards. The one thing you have to notice, a very important thing here, it is a small pouch which is formed in between the liver and the right kidney. A pouch like thing, a depression or a groove like thing is called as hepatorenal pouch of Morrison. Hepato, liver, renal, kidney. So in between the peritoneal pouch, in between the liver and the right kidney, hepatorenal pouch of Morrison. Why we are talking about this one is, whenever a person is lying supine, hepatorenal pouch of Morrison is the most dependent area. That is, whenever in any pathological condition, if at all by chance the pus is getting collected, this one area, that is the hepatorenal pouch of Morrison, will be the one in which it will be collected. That is, in a person lying supine, hepatorenal pouch of Morrison is the most dependent area. Here in this diagram, you have to appreciate once again the attachment of the falciform ligament onto the anterior superior surface of the liver is diverging into a right superior layer of the coronary ligament here and onto the left lobe of the liver as the anterior layer of left triangular ligament. Now in this picture, this picture is the posterior surface of the liver. This one, in the upper part, you are looking at the superior layer of coronary ligament, or even the upper layer of the coronary ligament, or simply superior coronary ligament. The one we already know, this one is the inferior coronary ligament. Until now, we have thought it might be parallel to each other. They are parallel to each other, but they are not. At the right end, they actually meet with each other, forming one more ligament here. It is the right triangular ligament, by means of which once again liver will be connected to the diaphragm. So until here the whole of the liver is covered by the peritoneum, the anterior superior surface. Now this whole area is once again covered by the peritoneum, leaving up a small area here in between these two ligaments, which are literally bare. That is, they are not covered by any peritoneum. Such areas are called as bare areas. Now once again, over the left lobe of the liver, I want to show the left triangular ligament. The whole of the left lobe of the liver is covered by the peritoneum. Here the ligament is being formed in between the two layers, that is called as the left triangular ligament, by means of which once again the liver is attached onto the diaphragm. Now once again, hepatorenal pouch of Morrison. So here once again look at the whole thing, the covering of the whole liver, and then the peritoneum is descending downwards, covering the anterior surface of the right kidney. The depression here is hepatorenal pouch of Morrison. Now let us move a little bit more onto the left side. Now after covering the whole of the liver, the peritoneum, apart from moving downwards, moves a little bit to the left, forming the anterior layer of lesser omentum. So in between the liver and the stomach, this peritoneal fold is the lesser omentum. So the greater sac peritoneum, it forms the anterior layer of the lesser omentum. After reaching the lesser curvature of the stomach, it covers this surface, that is the anterior superior surface, and even the first part of the duodenum, and then after covering the whole of the surface, it reaches the greater curvature of the stomach, where it descends downwards as the first layer of greater omentum. While covering the stomach, it goes a little bit further to the left and covers the whole of the spleen also. Now we have seen until here, where we have seen the formation of the first layer of greater omentum. The first layer of the greater omentum descends to a variable extent, covering the loops of the small intestine, and then once again it ascends, forming the fourth layer of the greater omentum. Next, this one is the transverse colon. It covers the anterior inferior surface of the transverse colon, forms the inferior layer of the transverse mesocolon, and then covers a part of body of pancreas. Now this whole thing is the greater sac. Now this one what we are looking at here is the lesser sac. Lesser sac is covering a part of the liver. To be exact, it is the caudate lobe of the liver which gets covered by the lesser sac, and then it is coming and forming the posterior layer of the lesser omentum, covering the posterior surface of the stomach, and then reaching the greater curvature. It becomes the second layer of the greater omentum, and then which ascends as the third layer of the greater omentum. Next covers the part of a transverse colon, and then becomes the superior layer of transverse mesocolon, and then covers the part of body of pancreas. So these whole areas are being covered by lesser sac. Now let us come back to the greater sac. So we have traced it until here. Now after covering the part of body of pancreas, it descends further downwards to become the mesentery. As you all remember, mesentery is nothing but a peritoneal fold by which the small intestines are suspended from the posterior abdominal wall. Now, so we are here. This one, these all things, the purple things are the loops of small intestine. So, suspending them from the posterior abdominal wall, this yellow thing is what we call as mesentery. Now, we are finished until here. So, we have seen the formation of transverse mesocolon. It is descending further downwards where it has to form the mesentery. So, apart from forming the mesentery, it has to cover what this one is the ascending colon. This is ascending, this is transverse, this is descending. So it has to cover the anterior surface of ascending colon. Ascending colon is a retroperitoneal organ, and hence it will be only the anterior surface of the ascending colon which will be covered by the peritoneum. After covering the ascending colon, it moves on a little bit on to the left. Now covering the whole of the structures which are present over here at the posterior abdominal wall. Next it forms the right layer of the mesentery, and then covers the whole of the small bowels, and then after covering the whole of the small bowels, it becomes the left layer of the mesentery, and thus the mesentery is formed. And then it goes once again more onto the left side where it has to cover the descending colon. So thus we have covered the whole of the posterior abdominal wall. Now one more thing you have to notice here is paracolic gutter. So what is this? Paracolic. Para is by the side of. Colic is colon. It might be either ascending colon or descending colon. So what is this gutter and why is this being formed? So now imagine a big tube on which we are laying a cloth on it. So the cloth will take the shape of the tube on which it is lying upon, right? But by this it will be covering the front and sides of the tube. If you notice, by the sides of the tube there will be a small depression like thing, right? So the depressions are what we call as gutter here. The tube which we have imagined are the either ascending colon or descending colon. When the peritoneum is covering either one of them, there are small depressions which are being formed on the sides of the colon, that are nothing but our paracolic gutter. So here this one is the left paracolic gutter, because this is the descending colon which is lying on the left side. It becomes the left paracolic gutter. The paracolic gutter associated with the ascending colon will become the right paracolic gutter. Now, so we are somewhere here. We have finished the formation of the mesentery. We are descending further downwards along the posterior abdominal wall. Now we have reached the pelvic cavity. So this is a pelvic cavity in case of a male, and this one is the organs present in a female pelvic cavity. From before backwards, it is urinary bladder and rectum posteriorly, whereas in case of female, it is the rectum posteriorly, and then it is the uterus, cervix and vagina, and then finally most anteriorly placed is the urinary bladder. Okay. Now let us trace the peritoneum. So we are here. Coming down, it will be entering into the pelvic cavity, where it will be covering the upper one third and middle one third of the rectum, and then descends further downwards and once again ascends, covering the superior surface of the urinary bladder. Now, in case of females, it will descend further, it will descend downwards, cover the upper and middle one thirds of the rectum, and then once again go on to cover the uterus, and then form a pouch here, and then once again cover the superior surface of the bladder, and then once again ascend up along the anterior abdominal wall. Now let us see at a close up of the things we have discussed until now in case of males. So we have only two organs, pelvic, it is the rectum and bladder. It is covering the rectum, forming a pouch here in between the rectum and bladder. This is called as rectovesical pouch. In between rectum and vesicum is the bladder. The pouch which is being formed here is the rectovesical pouch. Now, in case of females, as we see, rectum, uterus and bladder. So, it is covering the rectum, and in between the rectum and uterus, there is a pouch being formed here that is called as rectouterine pouch of Douglas. The importance of this rectouterine pouch of Douglas is, as we know, hepatorenal pouch of Morrison is the most dependent area when a person is in supine position. Likewise, whenever a person is in upright or semi-upright position, this rectouterine pouch of Douglas in case of females and rectovesical pouch in case of males will become the most dependent areas. After covering the uterus, and once again it's sweeping on to the superior surface of the bladder, and the pouch which is being formed here is the utrovesical pouch. Now, as it has covered all the pelvic organs, once again it has to reach to the point where it has started, right? So it is a closed sac. It has to end where it has started. Now we are here. It is covering the superior surface of the bladder. From the apex of the urinary bladder, it once again goes, covers the posterior surface of the anterior abdominal wall, once again reaching the umbilicus where we have started. So we have gone from here, gone up, covered the whole of the things and covered the whole of the pelvic cavity organs, and once again we have reached to the same area, that is umbilicus. This picture will give you a better view of the things. So yeah, somewhere here this is the urinary bladder, apex of the urinary bladder. So it is ascending upward. This is the anterior abdominal wall as seen from posterior surface. So it is going up, once again reaching the umbilicus. So you can notice it is forming a few folds here. In the midline we have a median umbilical fold. Next to it we have medial umbilical fold, and lastly we have lateral umbilical fold. You need not know much about this, but remember, right beneath the umbilicus it is forming the parietal peritoneum is forming a few folds, median, medial and lateral umbilical folds. Now, so we have finished the vertical tracing. We are on to the next one, horizontal tracing. We will be tracing the whole of the abdomen at two levels. We will be tracing it above the level of transverse colon. The next one will be below the level of transverse colon. Now, below the level of transverse colon. So, let us start it from here. So, these are nothing but, just now we have seen the folds of the median, medial and lateral umbilical folds which the peritoneum has formed. So, these are the things which are present within those peritoneal folds. Next, tracing it to the right side. So, the parietal peritoneum will be covering the anterolateral part of the abdomen, and then reaching the ascending colon, it will be covering the anterior layer of the ascending colon. The thing you need to appreciate here are these grooves which you are looking at here are the sides of the ascending colon. This one is the paracolic gutter. Now, moving on, after covering the anterior and sides of the anterior and sides of the ascending colon, it is moving on to the left side, covering the anterior surface of the inferior vena cava, and it becomes the right layer of the mesentery, covers up the coils of the jejunum and ileum, that is the small intestine. Once again comes back to form the left layer of the mesentery, covers the aorta, and then once again moves on much further to the left to cover the anterior surface of the descending colon, and then once again covers the lateral anterior surface of the abdominal wall, and once again we are back to the where we started. So, apart from this, there is the greater omentum peritoneal fold which is covering the loops of small intestine. The thing we need to appreciate here are the four layers of the greater omentum: 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now, we are left with above the level of transverse colon horizontal tracing. So, let us start it from here. This one, bilaminar fold of peritoneum right a little bit onto the right of the midline is falciform ligament 1, 2. So, it is bilayered fold of peritoneum. This is falciform ligament. On reaching the liver, it is diverging right side and left side, thereby covering almost the whole of the liver. Now, trace the parietal peritoneum onto the right side. It is covering the anterolateral part of the abdomen, descending, going back, and then covers the anterior surface of the right kidney, goes back and covers the anterior surface of the inferior vena cava. This vein what we are looking at is the inferior vena cava. Now, let us trace the parietal peritoneum on the left side. So, it moves on to the left side, comes back and covers the anterior surface of the left kidney. This one is the left kidney, and then moves on to cover the whole of the spleen. Next goes on to cover the anterior superior surface of the stomach and becomes the anterior layer of lesser omentum. Now, this whole thing is the greater sac. Now, behind the stomach, the small part is the lesser sac. So, lesser sac is covering the posterior surface of the stomach and forming the posterior layer of the greater omentum, covering the inferior vena cava and all. Next, the ligament in between the spleen and stomach, here first layer, superior layer, inferior layer. This is gastrosplenic ligament. Now, the ligament in between the spleen and the kidney, left kidney, this one, superior layer, inferior layer. This is lieno-renal ligament. Lieno indicates spleen, renal is kidney. So, in between the spleen and the left kidney is lieno-renal ligament. So, in relation to the spleen, we have two ligaments here. In between the spleen and stomach, we have the gastrosplenic ligament. In between the spleen and the left kidney, we have lieno-renal ligament.